Year 10 and 11, welcome to your comparison of London and checking out my history in preparation for your English Literature Poetry exam. Obviously, a Power and Conflict poetry. This is just some suggestions of things you might want to make in a comparison. It is by no means the definitive answer, so I hope it's useful. Don't forget that you should be comparing the poems as you go. This is a comparative essay, so ensure that when you are comparing language devices and structural devices that you are comparing them. There's a list of connectives there, use them as you see fit. Try to vary your use of the word shows. You don't want to be too repetitive and keep saying the writer shows this metaphor shows that, the simile shows this. So again, there's a variation on the word shows. Again, use as you see fit. Perhaps note a couple down in preparation for your exams, and obviously just vary it. In terms of just quick ideas, I have got example paragraphs coming up on how we might compare structure and compare languages, so stick with me if you need examples of how to do them. But just don't forget, there's just a list of devices here. So London is on the left there. You've got your regular stanzas and your alternate rhyme, symbolising how London is confined and conflicted and repressed by authority. You've got your alternate rhyme, again, this idea that the evils of London are cyclical and persist, and, William Blake and the people of London almost can't defend themselves against the powers that be. And this, I suppose, his frustration is highlighted in the enjambment, which leads us to the end of the poem. Remember that horrific ending of the marriage hearse. You've got your iambic tetrameter as well, near, where, the chart, Thames does flow, and that creates that sombre tone emphasising that the capital city is ruined by the institutions, and the institutions are also corrupt, and therefore this prolongs the suffering of the people. On the other side then is checking out my history. We've got two different structures being used in checking out my history, which are marked by two different fonts. So the first little structure going on is repeated. It starts with the repetition of Dem Tell Me, and this is the white version of history. Now that is mostly written in rhyming couplets, triplets or quatrains, and the black section of history is written in italics, and it's a lot slender in its presentation on the page. Agard uses irregular stanzas as well, and don't forget, if the black lessons that he's trying to teach us are slender and do appear irregular, and it allows them to stand out. So this story of the nanny and this story of Mary Seacole, they stand out further because of the way they are presented to us. His rhyming couplets, again, it can represent, I suppose, anything you see fit, but it almost serves to show us the division, doesn't it, between the black people and the white people, and this division of what he is taught through the British education system and what he believes is being missed out. A potential example paragraph then is here. Again, by no means the right answer, it's just a suggestion. Agard alternates between two structures in checking out my history to perhaps outline the misuse of power in relation to the education system in Britain. These two structures are marked by two different fonts. The first uses the repeated phrase, Dem Tell Me, to indicate the white version of history, which is mostly written in rhyming couplets, triplets or quatrains, and is more forceful in the blunt phrase, Dem Tell Me. Alternatively, the second structure employs italics and is more slender in its appearance on the page. This use of irregular stanzas allows the lessons which were actually important to him to stand out. For example, Toussaint a slave. On closer analysis, it seems fitting to assume that the more slender-looking stanzas detailing the lives of prominent black figures serves to emphasise the injustice and arguably the power of white people. Additionally, Agard utilises rhyming couplets, and this adds a more humorous tone to the poem and seems to fit the speaker's mockery of how British history is taught in schools, and refers back to the nursery rhymes referenced throughout. In contrast, London uses regular stanzas and alternate rhyme, and this is used to symbolise how London is confined, conflicted, and repressed by the powers of authority. The alternate rhyme also suggests that the evils of London are cyclical and will persist, which worsens the marks of war. Moreover, the utilisation of enjambment builds up the speaker's anger and frustration, and this is further amplified by the iambic tetrameter, near where the charted Thames does flow, which also creates a sombre tone, emphasising that the capital city is ruined and institutions are corrupt. It also prolongs the suffering of the people who feel defenceless in the face of the governing institutes. If we just move on now to some suggestions in language and then my language paragraphs. Again, these are just suggestions. So some things we might want to mention in terms of language in London is obviously the repetition of chartered, that even the geographical locations and the famous places in London like the Thames are controlled by the government. You've got the repetition of woe and weakness in that negative alliteration of W, which is obviously the consequences of what the government have caused, which is that people feel worried. That huge metaphor, the marks in every face here, so you know that the people are physically drained, physically ruined and followed, I suppose, by the people in charge. Blake uses the emotive language in cry and infant, so that actually what we realise as a reader is that this corruption and the effect of corruption is filtered all the way down so that it affects our children. And a huge metaphor in London is mind-forged manacles. And obviously we know that manacles are handcuffs, are restraint. And this idea that not only are we physically trapped in London, but actually our minds, our brains, our thoughts are all controlled. And that we are forced to think what the government want, what the palace want, any institution in charge. Checking out my history then, Agard uses a variation in his spelling. And it's to suggest Caribbean dialect. So obviously he replaces the with D, and this stresses the importance of his identity and this independence and this bravery, that he will defy authority in the search of who he is. I've mentioned them tell me a few times, so I'll not do that now, but as we pointed out, it starts the white sections, and if you think carefully, there's a segregation in them and Agard. You've got that idea that them isn't him, and he feels very detached from who they are. As we know, he references some important notions of history like 1066, but when he says even 1066 and all that, it's a historical reference, but actually he's referencing this humorous book that was published in the 30s that was making fun and parodies of history in England. And there's a suggestion that the version of history taught to the poet isn't accurate, because as we rightly know, lots of things have been left out, namely anything that important that black people have done. A little bit more then. The repetition of every in London is very absolute, isn't it? Nobody's missed out. Every single person is negatively affected by the powers that be, and that's an issue, isn't it? And then he goes on from the government to the church, and we realise that in Blake's opinion, the church is even affected and perhaps corrupt, and we get every blackening church appalled. So literally we've got the chimney sweepers ending up black, but metaphorically we've got the loss of innocence that the chimney sweepers suffer, and actually that they would lose their lives. And remember, the chimney sweeps were often children. So again, we've got this awful instance of our children suffering because of the people that are in charge. And therefore power here is presented as something quite horrific. So the church were responsible for the chimney sweep, appalled by the cries, speaks for the listener, because we're now appalled that the church allows it to happen. You know, a sacred place, a religious place, a place of forgiveness. We also get the metaphor of the soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. Listen to your sibilants there, the soldier's sigh. Again, this is a symbol of the government. The idea that royalty now as well has blood on their hands. The soldier is hapless because he can't do anything about it. He's powerless and follows his orders. So far, William Blake has pointed his finger at the government. He has pointed his finger at religion, and now he points his finger at the church. So it's not just one instance here of a misuse of power. In fact, it's quite a few. And then obviously as the poem progresses, I think the suffering worsens, because we get the harlot. We get this young prostitute who has a foul mouth and she blasts the child. Again, blasts is interesting because there's two interpretations. Is it a verbal blasting, that she's swearing at the child, or is it actually a physical blast, in which case she physically abuses the child? And again, we've got this awful notion that children are being brought into a corrupt world. And Blake goes further. The prostitute, in his eyes, is responsible for the blight and the plague, and therefore the disease which is spread. And blight means to tarnish and to destroy something. And when we get to the last line, which is that huge oxymoron of the marriage hearse, it's this idea that the prostitute has ruined the institution of marriage, and that there's disease spreading around because of her. And don't forget, she's young and she has a child. There's lots of questions here. Has the child now got the disease? And then we've got the flip side of that. If the prostitute has ruined marriage, is it that she's having sex with married people? And again, we've got this awful finish to the poem London. If we go back to checking out my history, then the sections on the individual black figures contain stronger imagery than the white, than the people about than the sections about the white people. Sorry about that. And these metaphors are huge in terms of comparing people to beacons and light and fire. So the first one we've got, excuse my pronunciation, is to Sunt Overture, is a thorn and a beacon. Now, if you think about a thorn will hurt, obviously, if touched, but also, more importantly, is perhaps a beacon of light, something that provides us with hope. Now, this idea of light runs throughout the poem because Nanny de Maroon is linked with a mountain, fire and rivers. And again, so beacon and fire, we've got light there. And then Mary Seacole is linked to being a healing star and a sunrise. So as I've just said, as you can see on the bottom there, we've got all three are associated with light: beacon, firewoman and star. And this is metaphorical. Is it illuminating the poet's history? Is it showing him the way? Is it providing him with hope in the face of these corrupt powers? Don't forget as well that Nanny de Maroon, again, apologies for my pronunciation, is compared to natural things like mountains and fires and rivers. And there's perhaps a suggestion there that we almost can't survive without it. Like John Agard can't survive or can't go on with his life without knowing where he has come from, because this is his whole identity. Before I show you my example paragraphs on language, there's a few other things about checking out my history that I've added on there. Obviously, take what you need. The repetition, we've done that. If Dem tell me, it segregates the white people from the black. He dismisses British history by using pantomimes like Dick Whittington. So there's that mockery. We've got the metaphor of bandage up my eye with my own history. Suggests he feels as if the white people are stopping him from knowing about who he is, and that links straight down to blind me to my own identity. Remember, bandages have connotations of pain, I suppose, and this idea that he's blind. He describes black people with emotive language, for instance, slave. Later on, freedom and hope. I've mentioned the images of light. I've mentioned the nursery rhymes which present the white people, the history of white people in Britain as quite silly. The emotive language of struggle, freedom and hopeful present the history of black people, and obviously the fact that they faced a struggle. The metaphor freedom river, the continued fight for freedom, has links back to slavery. And I've mentioned Mary Seacole, and carving out my identity obviously finishes the poem. So take those notes as you see fit in terms of how we might use them to compare to London. I'm just going to show you a couple of example paragraphs on language. One for London, one for checking out my history. It is by no means everything that you can see. It is just some suggestions. And so I hope you find them useful. So here's an example of London. Blake explores the oppressive nature of government and the effect or affect it has on people. The repetition of charted in I wander through each charted street near where the charted Thames does flow refers to confined or mapped out or even legally defined. The speaker is suggesting that the streets of London and even the Thames itself are increasingly the subject of government control. This is heightened by the metaphor and mark in every face I meet, marks of weakness, marks of woe. He is able to mark or observe in every face he meets marks of weakness, marks of woe. Clearly, society has worn down people so that their weariness is physically visible. Furthermore, these two lines also include the alliteration of the W. When combined with iambic tetrameter, there is a pessimistic tone created as people feel worried about the lives they lead. Additionally, the marks are perhaps subtly linked to blight and the harlot. Blake presents a young foul-mouthed prostitute who blasts a child, and the implications here are that children are brought into a corrupt world, corrupt because of authority figures and institutions misusing their power. Therefore, the prostitute is also responsible for the blight, plague, and disease which is spread. To solidify this, Blake uses the oxymoron marriage hearse, suggesting that the prostitute not only ruins children and their innocence, but also the institute of marriage. On the other hand, whilst Agard also highlights the misuse of power in the British education system, he refuses to accept it, and therefore throughout the poem he uses variations in spelling to suggest Caribbean dialect, especially replacing with d. This stresses the importance of carving out his own identity and being oppressed by the powers that be. Moreover, the sections on individual black historical figures contains stronger imagery than the nursery rhymes, with the use of nature and natural metaphors to powerful effect. Toussaint Overture is a thorn and a beacon. Nanny de Maroon is linked with a mountain, fire and rivers. Mary Seacole is described in dramatic imagery as a healing star and a yellow sunrise to the patients she treats. All three are associated with light, beacon, firewoman and star, suggesting that they play metaphorical roles illuminating the poet's true historical identity and once again implying power in the face of injustice. It seems the theme of power is threefold in this poem. One instance of power is that in Agard's experience it has been abused in the British education system. The other instance of power is his independence to defy authority. And finally, the third instance of power is through the actions of the historical figures he references, Nanny de Maroon, for example. As I say, this was just some examples of what we might write about those two poems, and I hope it's been useful. Please check out my YouTube channel for other single videos and comparisons, and massive good luck in your English literature exam.